My greedy son-in-law shouted in court, "Time to humiliate this worthless old man." His smug parents laughed out loud. "Look, soon he'll be begging for change on the streets." They were certain I'd break and plead for mercy, but when the judge asked one devastating question, the entire courtroom froze in horror, and their smirks turned into masks of terror. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Elwood Bell. I'm 68 years old, living in Jacksonville, Florida. Spent 32 years as a municipal judge before hanging up my robes 3 years back. I always believed the law was the highest form of civilization, a way to solve conflicts without blood. Funny how life teaches you that sometimes the worst betrayals come wrapped in legal documents. 5 years ago, I lost my wife. The house on Riverside Avenue felt too big, too empty. When my daughter Danielle and her husband Justin suggested moving in, I thought it was Providence. Family under one roof again. The pool would finally see some use. The guest rooms wouldn't gather dust. I signed over the deed, keeping only a life estate for myself. Seemed fair. Danielle wasn't always like this. I remember teaching her to ride a bike on this very street, running alongside her with my hand on the seat. She'd look back, laughing, trusting I wouldn't let go. When did she stop looking back? When did that trust evaporate like morning fog off the St. Johns River? Justin Crawford, 36 years old, partner at his father's firm, Crawford and Associates. Sharp dresser, sharper tongue. When they first started dating 6 years ago, he was charming. Brought flowers, asked intelligent questions about case law, laughed at my stories. I should have noticed he only laughed when Danielle was watching. The change was gradual, like rust creeping across metal. First year after moving in, perfect. He'd ask about my day, share firm gossip, pour me bourbon on the patio. Second year, polite distance. Third year, the mask started slipping. Little comments about modern families and generational differences. By the fourth year, the comments weren't little anymore. "Still up at 6, Elwood?" he'd say, not bothering to hide the irritation. "Some of us work late and need quiet in the morning." I started making my coffee quieter. You know, most people your age downsize. Condos are very comfortable these days. I started spending more time in my room. That collection of old law books, it's just gathering dust. We could use that space for something actually valuable. I stopped displaying my collection. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in early March. Danielle had cooked. Rare these days, since Justin preferred takeout from expensive restaurants. The three of us sat at the dining table I'd bought 30 years ago. Spring rain drummed against the windows. "We need to discuss something," Justin said, not looking up from his phone. Even his tone had changed. The way you'd address a subordinate, not family. "Sure," I said, cutting into my chicken. "What's on your mind?" "The house." He set down his phone with deliberate precision. "We've been generous letting you stay here, but it's time to formalize the arrangement. I've had documents drawn up for full transfer." My fork stopped midway to my mouth. "Full transfer? I have a life estate. That was the agreement." "Agreements change." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're getting older. What if something happens? The legal complications would be a nightmare. Better to simplify now." "Justin's right, Dad," Danielle said softly. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "It makes sense. Legally." "Legally?" My own daughter was using the law against me. "I'm not signing anything," I said, keeping my voice level. 32 years on the bench taught me never to show emotion when delivering a verdict. Justin's expression hardened. "Don't be stubborn, old man. This house is worth $890,000. Do you have any idea what that means? The property taxes alone?" "I'm aware of the taxes. I've been paying them for 23 years. "With whose money?" He leaned forward, and I saw something cold swimming behind his eyes. "Let's be honest, Elwood. You're a burden. You take up space. You use utilities. You're just... here. The least you can do is make this easy." The rain got louder, or maybe that was my heartbeat. Easy for whom, exactly? "For everyone." He stood, looming over the table. "Sign the papers, or I promise you, you'll regret it. You'll die alone in some cheap apartment, begging for spare change. That's your future if you fight me on this." Danielle said nothing. My daughter, who I'd rocked through nightmares, who I'd taught to read, who I'd walked down the aisle, said absolutely nothing. She just stared at her plate, and her silence cut deeper than Justin's words. "I think dinner's over," I said quietly, standing. My chair scraped against the hardwood I'd refinished myself 12 years ago. As I walked to my room, Justin's voice followed me down the hall. "Sleep on it, old man, but the answer better be yes." I closed my door and sat on my bed, staring at nothing. The house settled around me with familiar creaks. Outside, the rain continued its assault. War, I thought. This is what war feels like when your enemy sleeps down the hall. The next morning, I tried to catch Danielle alone. Found her in the kitchen, making coffee in that expensive machine Justin had insisted on buying. Said my old Mr. Coffee was embarrassing when guests came over. "Danielle, can we talk?" She didn't turn around. "I'm running late, Dad. It'll just take a minute." She sighed, and even that small sound carried such weight of annoyance. When did I become an annoyance to my own child? What Justin said last night was practical. She finally faced me, and I barely recognized the woman standing there. When had her eyes become so hard? "You're being emotional about this." "Emotional? Sweetheart, this is my home. It's our home. Justin and I have careers, responsibilities. We're building a future." She paused, and something flickered across her face. Shame, maybe, or its ghost. "You've had your turn, Dad. You've lived your life." There it was, dismissal wrapped in gentle words. Have I? The question came out softer than I intended, because I thought I was still living it. She looked away. "I have to go." I watched her leave, car keys jangling, designer purse over her shoulder. The door closed with a decisive click. The house felt colder. I remembered teaching her to make coffee when she was 15. She'd wanted to surprise her mother for Mother's Day. We'd practiced for weeks, getting the measurements perfect. She'd been so proud that morning, serving breakfast in bed, wearing an apron 3 sizes too big. "Dad, did I do good?" she'd whispered, watching her mother's face. "You did perfect, sweetheart. Just perfect." Where was that girl now? When did she become this stranger who looked at me like I was a problem to be solved? The psychological warfare started that afternoon. I found my bedroom door lock changed. Justin was in the hallway, dangling the new key. "Security measure," he said, teeth showing in what might have been a smile. "With your memory going, we can't risk you locking yourself in." "My memory's fine." "Sure it is." He pocketed the key. "Oh, and I've restricted the Wi-Fi password. You were using too much bandwidth, slowing down my work connections." Every day brought new humiliations. He'd interrupt my phone calls, claiming he needed to make an important work call. He'd move my things, books, reading glasses, medication, claiming he was tidying up. Once I found my favorite cardigan in the trash. "Thought it was a rag," he said with a shrug that told me he'd known exactly what it was. Danielle witnessed it all and said nothing. I started keeping a journal, documenting everything. Old habits from the bench, evidence, timeline, patterns, something in my gut, some instinct honed by 3 decades of weighing truth against lies, told me this was heading somewhere dark. I was right. 5 weeks after that dinner, an envelope arrived, official, from the county courthouse. My hands didn't shake as I opened it. Judges don't shake easily. But my heart rate definitely picked up. Petition for guardianship. Justin Crawford, petitioner, seeking to have me declared incapacitated due to advanced senile dementia and inability to manage personal affairs. I sat down hard on the porch steps, reading it twice, then 3 times. The audacity was breathtaking. He was trying to have me declared incompetent. If he succeeded, he'd control everything, my finances, my medical decisions, my life. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was about erasing me. I remembered another time, 30 years back, when I'd presided over a similar case, an elderly woman whose son claimed she was incompetent. I'd seen through his lies, dismissed the petition, and referred him for investigation. He'd been embezzling from her accounts. The memory felt prophetic. That evening, I made 2 phone calls from a coffee shop 3 blocks away. Didn't trust my own phone anymore. First call, Gerald Turner, a financial attorney I'd known professionally. Not a friend, but a competent man with a reputation for thoroughness. I need representation, and I need discretion. Second call, Robert Marshall, private investigator, former police detective, specialized in financial crimes. I need someone to look into Justin Crawford. Everything. Bank records, client complaints, professional history. Whatever you can find, legally. This going to get ugly? Marshall asked. It already is ugly. I'm just planning to make it fair. I hung up and sat in my car, watching the sun set over Jacksonville. The sky bled orange and red like a wound. Justin thought he was playing chess with a doddering old man. He didn't know he'd just declared war on someone who'd spent 3 decades studying human nature at its worst. Who'd seen every con, every manipulation, every legal trick in the book. I wasn't going to fight dirty. I was going to fight smart. And when I was done, Justin Crawford would understand the difference between a house and a home, between a life estate and justice. The plan started forming in my mind, pieces clicking together like a verdict taking shape. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Let him think he's winning, I thought. Predators always underestimate their prey when it looks weak, but I wasn't prey anymore. I was a judge who'd finally found a case worth fighting for, my own. The next morning I shuffled into the kitchen wearing my oldest cardigan, the one with the frayed sleeves Justin loved to mock. Left my reading glasses askew. Made a show of forgetting where I'd put the coffee filters. Looking for these? Justin asked, holding up the box that sat exactly where it always sat. Oh yes, thank you. I let confusion cloud my face. I could have sworn they were... Well, never mind. He exchanged a look with Danielle. Victory gleamed in his eyes. The fool thought he was witnessing decline. He didn't realize he was watching a performance honed by decades of courtroom strategy. Acting confused was easy. Judges do it all the time. Play dumb to see what witnesses will reveal when they think you're not paying attention. The trick is knowing when to drop the mask. That afternoon, while they both were at work, I met Gerald Turner at Riverside Brew, a coffee shop 10 blocks from the house. Gerald was 50-ish, wearing a suit that had seen better decades, but was impeccably clean, the kind of lawyer who cared more about truth than appearance. I've reviewed the guardianship petition, he said, sliding a folder across the table. It's thin. Circumstantial observations, no medical evidence, but don't underestimate it. Judges can be swayed by compelling testimony. What do we need? Counter evidence, medical evaluations showing cognitive function, character witnesses, and ideally something that calls Justin's motivations into question. He paused. You mentioned a private investigator? Robert Marshall, former detective, Jacksonville PD. He's looking into Justin's professional conduct. Gerald nodded approvingly. Good. Financial attorneys like Justin handle significant sums. If there are irregularities, then it becomes about him, not me. Exactly? He leaned back. How dirty do you want to play? I don't want to play dirty at all, I said. I want to play fair, which is more than he's doing. Back home, I continued my act. Asked Justin the same question twice. Left the refrigerator door open. Pretended not to remember his parents' names when he mentioned their upcoming visit. Thomas and Patricia, Dad? Danielle said, using that patient tone you'd use with a toddler. You've met them a dozen times. Of course, of course. The Crawfords. Nice people. I wasn't sure if they were nice. I'd only met them twice before, and they'd been distantly polite both times. But Justin's satisfied smirk told me my performance was working. 3 days later, Robert Marshall called. I took it in my car, parked at the public library. Found something interesting, he said without preamble. Your son-in-law handles estate planning for elderly clients. Several have filed complaints with the Florida bar. Nothing stuck. Complaints were withdrawn. Withdrawn how? That's the interesting part. Each time, shortly after filing, the complainant suddenly dropped the matter. One woman's son told me his mother received a generous settlement for her confusion. Hush money. My pulse quickened. Can you prove it? Not yet. But there's a pattern. 5 complaints in 3 years, all withdrawn, all involving elderly clients with substantial estates. He paused. I'm also tracking unusual transactions. Large sums moving between client trust accounts and offshore accounts, then back. It's sophisticated, but there are always traces. How long until you have something solid? 2 weeks, maybe 3. This kind of forensic accounting takes time. Time I might not have. The hearing's in 4 months. Then I'll work faster. That evening, Justin made an announcement over dinner. Chinese takeout. because actually cooking was apparently beneath them now. My parents are coming to visit next week, he said, spearing kung pao chicken with his fork. They want to see the house. Their future beach property investment, as my father calls it. Future investment. Not even pretending anymore. How nice, I said, deliberately using the wrong hand for my fork, switching halfway through the meal. Justin noticed. His smile widened. Yes, well, we'll need you to be presentable. First impressions matter. I'm always presentable, I said, letting a bit of indignation creep in, just enough to seem like wounded pride without actual threat. Sure you are. He exchanged another look with Danielle. She wouldn't meet my eyes. After dinner, I retreated to my room and pulled out my journal. Started a new section. Evidence of competence. Listed every medication I took, every bill I'd paid, every appointment I'd kept. Built a timeline of my days that showed cognition, organization, awareness. Then another section, Justin's behavior. Every insult, every manipulation, every time he'd accidentally damaged or discarded my possessions. Dates, times, witnesses when available. In court, I'd learned that the truth is built from small details, stacked until they form an unshakable tower. That's what I was building now, not a defense, but an offensive strike dressed in legal propriety. A week passed. I played my role flawlessly, the confused old man slowly losing his grip. Justin's confidence grew with each mistake I made. He started leaving legal documents about guardianship on the kitchen counter, not even hiding them. Psychological warfare designed to break me. What he didn't know was that each document I photographed with the small digital camera I'd bought at Walmart, paying cash. Every piece of evidence for Gerald Turner. Every display of overconfidence, another nail in Justin's coffin. The evening before his parents' arrival, I made a calculated error. Left the stove burner on, not high enough to be dangerous, just enough to be noticed. Justin found it, called Danielle in to witness. This is exactly what I mean, he said loudly, making sure I could hear from the next room. He could burn the house down. He's a danger to himself. I shuffled in, playing concerned. Did I do that? I don't remember. Of course you don't. His voice dripped with false sympathy. It's okay, Elwood. We understand. It's not your fault. But his eyes said something else. They said, I've got you now. I went to bed that night thinking about a case from 20 years back. A con man who'd played vulnerable to gain sympathy, all while running an elaborate fraud. The jury had watched him limp into court for weeks. Then, on the final day, security footage showed him jogging to his car. The jury convicted him in 40 minutes. Performance, I'd learned, is everything. But so is the reveal. Justin thought he was watching me decline. What he was actually watching was a trap being set, one careful day at a time. And tomorrow, his parents would walk right into it. Thomas and Patricia Crawford arrived in a silver Mercedes that cost more than most people's homes. I watched from the window as they emerged, him in golf casual that probably cost $500, her in white linen that screamed, I summer in places you can't pronounce. They didn't knock. Justin had given them a key. Welcome, welcome, Justin's voice carried through the house. Come in, let me show you around your future investment. Your future investment, my home of 23 years. I stayed in my room, counting to 100. Let them get comfortable. Let them think I was napping or confused, or whatever narrative Justin had built. When I finally emerged, they were in the living room, Patricia examining my bookshelf with the expression someone might wear when inspecting roadkill. These old law books, she said, not to me, but about me. Do people even use physical books anymore? It's all digital now. Elwood's old school, Justin said, stuck in the past. Hello, I said from the doorway. You must be Justin's parents. Welcome to my home. Patricia's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Your home? Oh, that's sweet. Justin, you didn't tell me he's still confused about the ownership situation. We're working on that, Thomas said. He was taller than Justin, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd never been told no. Sometimes elderly people need time to adjust to reality. I nodded slowly, playing the part. I'm sorry, I just meant, well, I've lived here so long. Old habits. Of course. Patricia patted my arm like I was a pet. You're very lucky Justin and Danielle are willing to let you stay. Most families would have made other arrangements by now. Other arrangements. Nursing home. The threat wasn't even subtle. Dinner was excruciating by design, theirs and mine. Danielle had ordered catering from some expensive restaurant. They set 5 places at my dining table, the one I'd refinished myself, where I'd celebrated birthdays and holidays and normal family dinners before everything turned poisonous. I sat at the far end. They clustered at the other, talking around me like I was furniture. "The location is perfect," Thomas said, gesturing with his wineglass. "Riverside Avenue, mature trees, pool. Properties here appreciate at 7 to 9% annually." "Justin made a smart move," Patricia agreed, "securing this asset early, before the old man could make any foolish decisions." The old man was sitting right there. "Mother, please," Danielle said quietly, the first words she'd spoken all evening. "What? I'm being practical. Your father understands." Patricia looked at me. "You understand, don't you, Elwood? You've had a good long life. Time to let the young people have their turn." I wanted to ask her exactly when I died, since apparently my life was over. Instead, I said, "I suppose that's one way to look at it." "The only way," Thomas said. "Resources should flow to those who can use them productively. That's basic economics." "And basic decency?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Thomas's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "Nothing, I'm just confused, as you said." I stood, hands shaking, not from age, from rage I had to contain. "I think I'll go to bed." "Already?" Patricia laughed. "It's barely 7. But yes, you probably need your rest. At your age." I left without responding. Behind me, their laughter continued. They didn't even lower their voices. In my room, I called Robert Marshall. "Tell me you have something," I said. "Better than something. I've got a witness. Elizabeth Webster's daughter, Sarah. Her mother died 6 months ago, but before she did, she told Sarah about discrepancies in her estate account. $127,000 that vanished for 3 months, then mysteriously reappeared." My heart rate kicked up. "Can she testify?" "She's willing. More than willing. Says her mother was too frightened to pursue it, but she's not." "And the money trail?" "Still tracking it, but I've found the pattern. Justin would transfer client funds to a shell, LLC, use them for short-term high-risk investments, then return the principal before anyone noticed. If the investments paid off, he pocketed the profit. If not—" Marshall paused. "Well, there were a few clients whose accounts never got fully repaid." "How many?" "4 that I can prove, maybe more." 4 counts of embezzlement. My hands steadied. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was about justice. "Document everything," I said. "Every transaction, every date, every dollar. Make it airtight." "Already on it. But there's something else you should know. The judge assigned to your case, Martin Richards. You two have history?" My throat tightened. "We were colleagues. Both municipal judges. Worked in the same courthouse for 15 years. Think he'll recuse himself?" "Not if I don't give him a reason to. Martin's fair. That's all I need." After hanging up, I sat in the dark, listening to the Crawfords' voices carrying through the house. They were in my living room, drinking my bourbon, planning my future like I was already dead. The next morning, they left early. Patricia kissed Danielle's cheek, ignored me completely. Thomas shook Justin's hand. "Handle this quickly," he said. "The sooner you have full control, the better." I watched from the window as their Mercedes pulled away. Justin found me there, still in my bathrobe. "They love the house," he said. "Can't wait for it to officially be ours." "I'm sure they can't. You could make this easier on everyone, you know. Just sign the papers. We'd let you stay. Find you a nice room somewhere. You'd be taken care of." "Like a pet," I said quietly. "Like family." But his tone said, "Like a problem we're solving." That afternoon, I met with Gerald Turner and Robert Marshall together, in a conference room at Gerald's modest office. "We have enough," Gerald said, spreading documents across the table. "Medical evaluations showing you're cognitively sound. Financial records showing you manage your affairs. Character witnesses. And now, thanks to Robert, we have Justin's misconduct." "Will Richards allow it?" Marshall asked. "The embezzlement evidence, I mean. It's not directly relevant to the guardianship petition." "It's relevant to Justin's character," I said. "His motivation. A judge has discretion to consider why someone's bringing a petition. If Justin's trying to seize control to cover his crimes, I let the sentence hang. Gerald smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then the whole case collapses, and Justin faces a Florida bar investigation. When do we file our response? I asked. 2 weeks. We'll include everything, medical evidence, financial records, and a motion to expand the scope based on new evidence of petitioner misconduct. Richards will schedule a hearing within 30 days after that. The timeline crystallized in my mind. 2 weeks until we show our hand. 6 weeks until the hearing. 6 weeks for Justin to twist in the wind, wondering what happened to his sure thing. Do it, I said. Walking to my car, I felt different, lighter. The prey had become the predator, and the predator didn't know the season had changed. That evening, Justin was in a good mood, whistling while he made dinner, actual cooking for once, showing off. I talked to my attorney today, he said casually. Everything's on track. He thinks the hearing will be straightforward. I'm sure it will be, I said. He looked at me sharply, trying to read my tone. But I'd had decades of keeping my face neutral. He saw nothing but tired acceptance. You're being smart about this, he said. That's good. I nodded and returned to my room, pulled out the journal, made a new entry. April 28th, Justin confident. Crawford's planning celebration. They have no idea what's coming. I closed the journal and looked at my reflection in the mirror. The old man looking back wasn't weak, wasn't confused. He was patient. And patience, I'd learned in 32 years on the bench, always wins in the end. 2 weeks after we filed our response, Justin's attorney, a slick corporate type named Richard Vance, submitted their evidence package. Gerald forwarded it to me with a note. Pathetic, but we need to take it seriously. I read through it that evening in my room. Incident reports claiming I'd left the stove on 3 times. Statements from Justin and Danielle that I repeated questions, forgot conversations, became confused about dates. Photos of my room showing disorganization, which was just my law book collection spread across my desk. The centerpiece was a sworn affidavit from Dr. Harold Morrison, a gerontologist Justin had apparently consulted. Based on third-party observations and behavioral patterns consistent with early-stage dementia, he recommended a comprehensive evaluation. Third-party observations. He'd never even met me. Gerald and I spent the next 3 weeks building our counter case. I underwent 2 cognitive assessments. Both showed normal function for my age. My physician, Dr. Sarah Chen, who I'd seen quarterly for 15 years, wrote a detailed letter. Mr. Bell demonstrates clear cognition, excellent memory, and manages his medical care independently. But the real work was Robert Marshall's. He'd tracked every dollar Justin had moved through 4 different client accounts. The pattern was unmistakable. Take money from elderly clients' trust accounts, invest it in high-risk ventures, return it before anyone noticed, except when the investments failed. Elizabeth Webster wasn't the only one. Robert told me during one of our meetings at his office. He spread bank records across his desk. Margaret Chen, $93,000 missing for 2 months. David Reynolds, $58,000. All elderly, all vulnerable, all too scared or confused to push back when Justin gave excuses. How many total? 4 confirmed, maybe 6. Total amount over $400,000. I felt cold. This wasn't just greed. This was predatory behavior targeting the most vulnerable. The Florida bar will want to see this, I said. Already prepared the package. Gerald's filing it as supplementary evidence. Shows motive for why Justin wants guardianship over you. Access to your assets. How much does Justin think I have? Robert smiled grimly. He probably thinks the house is it. Doesn't know about your pension, investments, the modest trust from your wife's estate. Combined, about $420,000. Enough to replace what he'd lost in bad investments. At home, the psychological pressure intensified. Justin found my car keys one morning, dangled them in front of me. These were in the refrigerator, he said, lying smoothly. I'd left them on the counter. I'd watched him take them. You're becoming a danger to yourself, Elwood. My mistake, I said, playing confused. I don't remember. But I remembered everything. And my small camera, hidden in a bookshelf, looking like a book spine, captured him taking my keys and putting them in the refrigerator himself. During dinner one evening, Thomas called. Justin put him on speaker, probably thinking I was too senile to understand. "The judge is Martin Richards," Thomas said. "I've made some calls. He's fair, which works for us. Your evidence is solid." Fair. The arrogance was stunning. They actually believed their fabricated evidence would hold up. "Shouldn't be a problem," Justin replied. "Gerald says we should have this wrapped up quickly." I caught Danielle watching me during this conversation. Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe guilt. But she looked away when I met her gaze. The week before the hearing, Gerald and I had our final preparation meeting. He brought Sarah Webster, Elizabeth Webster's daughter, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and barely contained anger. "My mother was terrified of him," she told me. "She kept saying the money disappeared, then came back, then disappeared again. She thought she was going crazy. Justin told her it was her memory, failing." "But it wasn't," I said. "No, it was him, moving her money around like a personal loan. When she died, I found her journals. Every discrepancy documented." Her hands trembled. "She died thinking she had dementia. He made her believe she was losing her mind." The cruelty of it hit me like a fist. Justin hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen his victims' confidence in their own sanity. "Will you testify?" Gerald asked her. "Absolutely." 2 days before the hearing, Justin came home with champagne. Premium stuff, $300 a bottle. "Celebrating early?" I asked. "Why not? This will all be over soon. You'll be somewhere safe, properly cared for. We'll have the house legally transferred. Everyone wins." "Everyone wins," I almost laughed. "Where do you think I'll go?" I asked, genuinely curious about his plan. "There's a nice facility in Orange Park, Shady Oaks. Very reasonable rates, all things considered." I looked it up later. Shady Oaks was a budget nursing home with a 1-star rating. Reports of neglect, understaffing, substandard care. He was planning to warehouse me in the cheapest place he could find. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. Lay awake thinking about every case I'd presided over, every verdict I'd delivered. How many lives had I affected? How many people had stood in my courtroom, hoping for justice? Tomorrow, I'd be the one hoping. The difference was, I'd spent 3 months preparing for this moment. And unlike Justin, I wasn't hoping. I was certain. At 2 in the morning, I got up and pulled on my old judge's robe, the one I'd kept as a memento, stood in front of the mirror wearing it. The man looking back wasn't confused or weak. He was ready. I hung the robe back in the closet and went to bed. Tomorrow, Justin Crawford would learn that the courtroom isn't a stage for the arrogant. It's a temple of evidence, and I'd spent my entire career learning how to worship there. The hearing was scheduled for 9 in the morning. I dressed carefully, my best suit, the navy one I'd worn for important cases, pressed shirt, conservative tie. Gerald had said appearance matters, but I already knew that. Justin and Danielle left an hour before me. They didn't offer me a ride. I took a taxi, arriving at the Duval County Courthouse 30 minutes early. The building was familiar territory. I'd walked these halls for 3 decades, knew every courtroom, every judge's quirks, every corner where lawyers huddled making deals. The security guard at the entrance, Marcus, still working after all these years, recognized me. "Judge Bell, good to see you, sir." "Not a judge anymore, Marcus. Just Elwood." "Once a judge, always a judge in my book." He waved me through security. "Good luck today." Word travels fast in courthouses. Courtroom 4B was already filling up. I spotted Justin immediately. Expensive charcoal suit. Probably cost $3,000. Thomas and Patricia flanked him like bookends, both dressed to intimidate. Patricia wore pearls that could have paid my property taxes. Thomas had cufflinks that caught the light with every gesture. They saw me enter. Patricia whispered something to Thomas. They both smiled. Gerald met me outside the courtroom. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." "Remember, stay calm. Answer clearly. Don't engage emotionally. You've done this 1,000 times from the other side. Just be yourself." We entered together. I took my seat at the respondent's table. Across the aisle, Justin leaned back in his chair, confidence radiating from every pore. Richard Vance, his attorney, was arranging documents with practiced efficiency. The bailiff called out, "All rise." The Honorable Judge Martin Richards presiding. Martin entered from his chambers. 61 now, hair more silver than I remembered, but the same sharp eyes that missed nothing. Our eyes met briefly. His expression revealed nothing. "Please be seated," Martin said. "We're here for a guardianship petition filed by Justin Crawford regarding Elwood Bell. Mr. Vance, you may proceed." Richard Vance stood, and for the next 20 minutes he painted a picture of a confused, declining old man. The stove incidents, the memory lapses, the disorganization, Dr. Morrison's affidavit about dementia patterns. "Mr. Bell is clearly unable to care for himself," Vance concluded. "This petition seeks only to ensure his safety and well-being." It was a good performance. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have been convinced. Then Justin asked to speak. Martin nodded permission. Justin stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and turned slightly toward the gallery, playing to the audience. "Your Honor, this is difficult for me. I love my father-in-law." The lie came smoothly. "But I can't stand by and watch him deteriorate. It's time to be honest." He paused dramatically. "It's time to humble this worthless old man." The courtroom went silent. Even Vance looked shocked. "Excuse me?" Martin said. "He's had his life, Your Honor. He's lived his time. Now it's the younger generation's turn. Time for him to step aside, accept reality, and let those of us who are productive take over." I heard someone gasp. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Danielle's face go pale. Thomas stood up in the gallery. "That's right. He should be grateful we're willing to take this burden off society's hands." Patricia joined him, laughing. "Can you imagine? Soon he'll be begging for spare change on the streets. Maybe then he'll understand his place." The courtroom erupted. Martin's gavel came down hard. "Order! Mr. Crawford, sit down. Mr. and Mrs. Crawford, one more outburst and you'll be removed." But they were too drunk on their own arrogance to care. Thomas was still standing, grinning like he'd won something. I sat quietly, hands folded on the table. I felt Gerald tense beside me, but I caught his eye and gave a tiny shake of my head. Let them talk. Let them show who they really are. Martin's face had gone cold. In 32 years, I'd seen that expression exactly 3 times, always before he destroyed someone's case. "Mr. Bell," Martin said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "do you have anything to say in response?" I stood slowly, met his eyes. "Only that I look forward to presenting our defense, Your Honor." My voice was steady, clear, nothing confused or weak about it. Justin's smile faltered, just a flicker, but I saw it, the first crack in his certainty. Martin looked from me to Justin, then back to me. Something passed between us, recognition maybe, respect, the understanding of 2 men who'd spent careers seeking truth. "Mr. Turner," Martin said, addressing Gerald, "I assume you have a defense to present?" "Extensively, Your Honor." "Then let's proceed." Martin's gaze swept the courtroom, landed on the Crawfords. "And let me be clear, this is a court of law, not a theater. The next person who makes a spectacle will be held in contempt." Thomas finally sat down, but he was still smiling, still confident. They had no idea what was coming. Gerald stood, approached the bench with a thick folder. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit medical evaluations, financial records, and character witnesses. We'll demonstrate that Mr. Bell is fully competent and that this petition is motivated not by concern, but by financial greed." Justin's smile vanished completely. Vance was on his feet, objecting, but Martin waved him down. "I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Turner." And that's when I allowed myself a small smile, because Justin Crawford, Thomas Crawford, and Patricia Crawford were about to learn what I'd known all along. Justice doesn't care about expensive suits or confident smiles. It cares about evidence. And I had plenty of that. Gerald began methodically. First, Dr. Chen's letter detailing my excellent health and cognitive function. Then the results from 2 separate neurological evaluations, both showing normal cognition for my age, better than average on several measures. Your Honor, these aren't subjective observations. These are clinical assessments from board-certified physicians who actually examined Mr. Bell, unlike Dr. Morrison's third-party opinion. Vance objected, but Martin overruled him. Next came the video evidence. Gerald had edited together clips from my hidden cameras. Justin placing my keys in the refrigerator, then discovering them later. Justin moving my medication bottles, hiding my reading glasses, deliberately creating the appearance of confusion. The courtroom watched in silence. I saw several people in the gallery shaking their heads. As you can see, Your Honor, the so-called evidence of incompetence was manufactured. Mr. Bell was not confused. He was being deliberately sabotaged by his son-in-law. Justin's face had gone from confident tan to an unhealthy gray. His hands gripped the table edge, knuckles white. Then Gerald called our first witness, Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, my neighbor of 15 years. "How would you characterize Mr. Bell's mental state?" Gerald asked her. "Sharp as ever," she said firmly. "We play chess every Sunday afternoon. He beats me more often than not. Last week we discussed the new property tax proposals. He understood every detail. There's nothing wrong with his mind." 2 more neighbors testified, then my physician, then my financial advisor, who confirmed I managed my investments independently and made sound decisions. By the time we finished, Justin's fabricated case was in tatters. But we weren't done. Gerald approached the bench with a new folder, thick, official-looking. "Your Honor, we'd like to address the petitioner's motivation for filing this guardianship. We've discovered evidence of serious professional misconduct by Mr. Justin Crawford that directly relates to why he seeks control over Mr. Bell's assets." Vance was on his feet. "Objection! This is completely outside the scope." "I'll allow it," Martin said. His tone had gone cold. "Character and motivation are relevant in guardianship proceedings. Continue, Mr. Turner." That's when I saw it, the moment Justin realized he'd miscalculated. His eyes darted to his father, to his attorney, back to Gerald. The confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked an awful lot like panic. Gerald presented the bank records. 4 client trust accounts, all elderly clients, all showing irregular transactions. Money disappearing for weeks or months, then returning. Sometimes less than what disappeared. Elizabeth Webster, age 82, $127,000 missing from her trust account for 93 days. Sarah Webster stood up in the gallery. Martin acknowledged her with a nod. Margaret Chen, age 79, $93,000, missing for 67 days. David Reynolds, age 76, $58,000, missing for 41 days. With each name, Justin seemed to shrink. The expensive suit couldn't hide his body language anymore, shoulders hunching, head dropping, the posture of someone watching their world collapse. Martin leaned forward. "Mr. Turner, are you alleging that Mr. Crawford embezzled from his clients?" "We're alleging that he used client trust accounts as his personal investment fund, Your Honor. The money would disappear into shell companies he controlled, get invested in high-risk ventures, then return to the client accounts, sometimes. When the investments failed, the clients were shortchanged." Thomas stood up again. "This is absurd. My son is a respected attorney." "Sit down, Mr. Crawford," Martin said, his voice sharp enough to cut. "One more interruption and you'll be removed." Thomas sat, but Patricia grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. Their earlier smugness had evaporated like morning dew. Martin turned his attention fully to Justin. "Mr. Crawford, I'm going to ask you directly. In the estate matter of Elizabeth Webster, which you handled last year, why did $127,000 disappear from the trust account for 3 months before returning?" The courtroom went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pen drop. Justin stood, his movements jerky. "Your Honor, there was a temporary transfer, an administrative necessity." "An administrative necessity." Martin's tone was flat. "For $127,000. For 3 months, without the client's knowledge or consent. It was a clerical error. The accounting department, and the same clerical error happened with Margaret Chen's account, and David Reynolds, and—" Martin consulted Gerald's documents. "Linda Patterson's account." Justin's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time since I'd met him, he was speechless. "That's 4 separate clients, Mr. Crawford. 4 administrative errors totaling over $400,000. Would you like to explain how your accounting department managed to make the same mistake 4 times?" Your Honor, I can explain." "I'm sure you can, but not to me." Martin glanced toward the back of the courtroom. "I notice we have representatives from the Florida bar present today." 3 people stood up in the back row. I recognized them. Sandra Mills and Robert Chen, both investigators for the bar. They'd been there the whole time, waiting. Gerald and I had notified them weeks ago, asked them to attend. Justin saw them. His face went from gray to white, the color of old paper. "No," he said so quietly I almost didn't hear him. "No, no, no," Patricia gasped. Thomas was frozen, finally understanding what was happening. Danielle, sitting behind Justin, had tears streaming down her face, but she wasn't moving to help him. She just sat there, crying silently. Martin set down his gavel. "This hearing is suspended. Mr. Crawford, you will remain in this courtroom. Representatives from the Florida bar, please approach." Justin turned to look at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. In that moment, I let him see everything. The months of planning, the careful evidence gathering, the patience, the absolute certainty that this moment would come. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just looked at him steadily and let him understand. He'd underestimated a man who'd spent 3 decades in courtrooms, who knew every rule, every procedure, every way that justice could move when properly motivated. His expression crumbled. The predator had become prey, and he knew it. "You," he whispered, "you did this." I didn't respond, didn't need to. Sandra Mills and Robert Chen approached Justin's table with the measured steps of executioners. They carried folders, thick ones, research, evidence, documentation, all the ammunition Gerald and Robert Marshall had gathered, formally presented to the Florida bar 3 weeks earlier. "Mr. Crawford," Sandra said, her voice professional but cold, "we're conducting an emergency investigation into allegations of misappropriation of client funds. You're required to cooperate fully." Richard Vance looked stricken. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. My client—" "Your client," Martin interrupted, "is an officer of this court who may have committed fraud against vulnerable clients. The Florida bar has jurisdiction. This proceeding is suspended pending their investigation." Thomas finally found his voice. "This is a setup. Judge Richards, I know people. The Bar Association president. Senator Morrison, Chief Justice. Mr. Crawford," Martin said, and his tone could have frozen fire, "if you're suggesting that connections should influence a criminal investigation, I suggest you stop talking. Immediately." Thomas's mouth snapped shut. The color had drained from his face, too. He was realizing, finally, that his connections meant nothing here. The evidence was too solid, too documented, too public. Justin tried a different approach. He turned to Danielle. Tell them I was trying to help these people. Tell them—" "Stop," Danielle said. Her voice was small, but it carried. "Just stop, Justin." He stared at her. "What?" "I knew." The tears kept coming. "Not everything, but I knew something was wrong. The late-night calls, the stress, the way you'd panic when certain clients called. I knew, and I looked away. Danielle, I looked away because I didn't want to know. Because I liked the house, the lifestyle, the status." She wiped her eyes. "But I watched you torture my father for months. I watched you try to destroy him. And I did nothing." She stood up, grabbed her purse. "I'm done with all of this." She walked out. Justin tried to follow, but Sandra blocked him. "You're not going anywhere, Mr. Crawford. We have questions." Patricia jumped up. "You can't do this. Our family has been part of Jacksonville society for 40 years. Thomas is a respected attorney. You're destroying our reputation on the word of this vindictive old man." She pointed at me, her face twisted with rage. Martin's gavel came down. "Mrs. Crawford, you will address the court with respect, or you will be removed. Mr. Bell is the victim here, not the perpetrator." "Victim? He planned this. He conspired to destroy my son." "He documented evidence of crimes," Martin corrected. "There's a difference, a significant one." Sandra and Robert were already spreading documents on Justin's table. Bank statements, transaction records, client complaints, everything. Justin tried to argue, to deflect, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the papers they showed him. "This transaction on March 15th, Robert said, pointing. "Transfer of $63,000 from the Chen Estate account to Harbor Investments, LLC. You're the registered agent for Harbor Investments." I was diversifying the portfolio. It's a legitimate investment strategy. Was it legitimate when you lost 37,000 in cryptocurrency speculation? Did you tell Mrs. Chen that her retirement fund was being gambled on digital coins? Justin had no answer. They went through each case methodically. Every transaction, every lie, every fabricated excuse. With each revelation, Justin seemed to shrink further. Thomas tried to intervene twice more. Tried to argue procedure, jurisdiction, anything, but Martin shut him down each time. The judge who'd been his son's target had become his worst nightmare. Impartial by the book, unmoved by status or connections. After an hour, Sandra looked up. Your Honor, based on this preliminary review, we're recommending immediate suspension of Mr. Crawford's license pending full investigation. Justin's head snapped up. You can't. We can, Robert said, and we are. You've demonstrated misuse of client funds, breach of fiduciary duty, and possible fraud. Your license to practice law in Florida is suspended effective immediately. The words hit Justin like physical blows. His career, his identity, his power, all gone in a sentence. The firm, Thomas said hoarsely. What about Crawford and Associates? Under investigation, Sandra said. All files, all accounts, all transactions. If we find systematic misconduct, the entire firm could face sanctions. Thomas made a sound like a wounded animal. His firm, his legacy built over 40 years, was being dismantled in real time. Patricia grabbed his arm. Do something. Call someone. There has to be... There's nothing, Thomas said quietly. The fight had gone out of him. There's nothing we can do. Martin turned to Gerald. Mr. Turner, given these developments, I'm prepared to rule on the guardianship petition. Thank you, Your Honor. The petition is denied, completely and definitively. Mr. Bell has demonstrated full competency. Moreover, the petitioner has demonstrated a pattern of predatory behavior that calls into question his own judgment and character. This case is dismissed. The gavel came down. It was over. Justin sat motionless at his table, staring at nothing. His expensive suit looked like a costume now, dress-up clothes on a man who'd lost everything that mattered to him. Thomas and Patricia were whispering urgently, probably planning damage control, calling lawyers, spinning narratives, but I could see it in their faces. They knew. The Jacksonville social circles they dominated were about to close ranks against them. Nothing kills a reputation like a scandal involving elder abuse and embezzlement. I stood slowly, straightened my tie. Gerald was shaking hands with Sandra and Robert, thanking them professionally. As I walked past Justin's table toward the exit, he looked up at me. His eyes were hollow. You destroyed me, he said. I paused, looked down at him, thought about that dinner where he'd threatened me, about the months of psychological torture, about his arrogant certainty that I was too old, too weak, too confused to fight back. No, I said quietly. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone saw it. Then I walked out of the courtroom, into the Jacksonville sunshine, and breathed deeply for the first time in months. Justice, I thought, wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. And truth, when properly documented and professionally presented, was more devastating than any act of vengeance could ever be. The weeks following the hearing moved with the inexorable momentum of a boulder rolling downhill. I watched it all unfold from my porch, coffee in hand, finally at peace in my own home. The Florida bar's investigation moved fast. They froze all of Crawford and Associates' accounts, suspended Thomas's license pending investigation, and launched a full audit of every case the firm had handled in the past 5 years. The Jacksonville News picked up the story. Prominent law firm under investigation for elder financial abuse. The headline alone was enough to destroy what Thomas had spent 40 years building. Justin tried calling me 3 days after the hearing. I let it go to voicemail. Elwood, please, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. If we could just sit down, work something out. I deleted it without finishing. There was nothing to work out. He called 4 more times that week, each message more desperate than the last. The final one came late at night, and I could hear the alcohol in his voice. You destroyed my life, my career, my marriage, everything. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? I saved that one, not out of cruelty, but as a reminder. He still didn't understand. He thought I'd destroyed him. He couldn't see that he'd done it to himself, one unethical decision at a time. Danielle showed up at the house on a Wednesday morning. I was in the garden, trimming the roses that had become overgrown during the months of psychological warfare. "Dad?" I turned. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. No expensive jewelry, no designer clothes. Just jeans and a plain shirt, her face bare of makeup, eyes red from crying. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the patio chairs. We sat in silence for a moment, the morning sun warm on our faces. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "Those words aren't enough, but I don't know what else to say." "Why now?" I asked. "Why not 6 months ago? 3 months ago? Any of the times you watched him humiliate me?" She flinched. I was scared. Of losing him, of losing the life we had. "I kept telling myself you were being difficult, that you didn't understand modern family dynamics. I made excuses for him. For myself." She wiped her eyes. "I became someone I don't recognize. Someone my mother would be ashamed of." That hit harder than I expected. My wife had loved Danielle fiercely, unconditionally. What would she think of what our daughter had become? "I filed for divorce," Danielle continued. "I'm living in a small apartment in Riverside, working as a paralegal. Ironic, I know. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work." She looked at me directly. "I want to make things right. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try." I studied her face, looking for manipulation, for the calculation I'd seen for months. I didn't find it. Just exhaustion, shame, and something that looked like genuine remorse. "Therapy," I said, weakly. "For at least a year. I'll pay for it, but you have to commit." "I already started. 3 sessions so far." "Good." I poured her coffee from my thermos. "This won't be fixed quickly, Danielle. Trust takes time to rebuild." "I know." She accepted the coffee with shaking hands. "I'll wait as long as it takes." We sat there for an hour, talking carefully around the pain, beginning the long process of rebuilding what had been broken. It wouldn't be easy, might never be complete, but it was a start. 2 weeks later, the Florida bar's findings were made public. Justin had embezzled over $600,000 from 7 elderly clients. The money had gone into risky investments, cryptocurrency speculation, even offshore gambling accounts. Some he'd repaid when the investments paid off. Others he'd covered up with creative accounting. His law license was permanently revoked. The bar filed criminal charges: fraud, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty. His attorney was already negotiating a plea deal to avoid trial. Thomas and Patricia's world crumbled with surgical precision. The investigation into Crawford and Associates revealed that Thomas had known about at least 2 of Justin's schemes and had helped cover them up. His license was revoked. The firm dissolved. Their prestigious home in Ponte Vedra Beach went on the market. They couldn't afford the mortgage without the firm's income. I heard through Gerald that they'd moved to a modest townhouse in Orange Park, the same area where Justin had planned to warehouse me. The symmetry wasn't lost on anyone. The day the divorce was finalized, Justin showed up at my house. I saw him through the window, standing at the end of the driveway, not approaching, just staring at the house that had almost been his. I walked out, stood on my porch, coffee mug in hand. We looked at each other across the lawn. He'd lost weight, looked older. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by khakis and a polo shirt. The job at the car dealership wasn't treating him kindly. "You won," he said finally. "No," I replied. "Justice won. There's a difference. You planned this from the beginning. The moment I filed that petition, you were 10 steps ahead. I documented your crimes and presented them in court. You did this to yourself, Justin. Every transaction, every lie, every stolen dollar, those were your choices." He laughed, a bitter sound. "In court, you said I'd be begging on the streets. Guess you were right. In court, you said I'd be begging on the streets. I'm just returning what you wished for me." I took a sip of coffee. "The difference is I didn't steal from vulnerable people to get here." His face twisted. For a moment, I thought he might cry or rage or something. Instead, he just turned and walked away. Got into a 15-year-old sedan, probably the only car he could afford now, and drove off. I never saw him again. Early September arrived with clear skies and cool mornings. The house was finally completely mine again. I'd had the locks changed, cleared out the last of Justin and Danielle's belongings, reclaimed every room. Danielle came by every Sunday. We'd play chess on the patio, talk about safe subjects, her therapy progress, her work, her plans to eventually go back to school. The conversations were careful, measured, but genuine. Healing was slow, but it was happening. She looked different now, lighter somehow. The designer labels and expensive jewelry had been replaced by simpler clothes, but she seemed more comfortable in them, more herself. "I saw Justin last week," she said during one of our chess games. "At the grocery store, he pretended not to see me." "How did that feel?" "Sad, mostly. Not for him, but for who I was when I was with him. I wasted 6 years becoming someone terrible." She moved her bishop. "But I'm not that person anymore." "No," I agreed. "You're not." She'd found work at a nonprofit that provided legal aid to low-income seniors. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She was now helping the same demographic Justin had victimized. It paid a fraction of what she'd been accustomed to, but she showed up every day with purpose. "Check," she said, grinning. I studied the board, found my escape. "Not yet." Gerald stopped by one afternoon with final paperwork. The house was legally, irrevocably mine. No life estate, no conditions, just a clear title in my name. "Heard from the DA's office," he said, accepting the beer I offered. "Justin took a plea deal. 5 years. Probably served 3 with good behavior." "White-collar crime always gets lighter sentences," I said. "True. But his legal career is over. His reputation is destroyed, and he'll have felony convictions following him forever." Gerald raised his beer. "You achieved what you set out to do. You protected yourself and brought a predator to justice." We drank to that. Thomas and Patricia I only saw once more, at the grocery store. They were in the checkout line ahead of me, buying generic brands, counting out cash carefully. Patricia saw me first. Her face went through several emotions: anger, shame, hatred, resignation, before settling on blank neutrality. Thomas just looked away. The man who'd boasted about connections and influence, who'd laughed at the idea of me begging on the streets, couldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't gloat, didn't say anything, just paid for my groceries and left. Their humiliation was complete enough without my adding to it. On a warm afternoon, I sat on my porch with a book I'd been meaning to read for years, a collection of landmark Supreme Court decisions. The pool sparkled in the sunlight. The garden was thriving. The house was silent except for the pleasant sounds of wind chimes and distant traffic. My phone rang. Danielle. "Hey, Dad. Just calling to see if you want company for dinner tonight. I could pick up something from that Thai place you like." "That sounds perfect." "Great. See you at 6. I set down my phone and looked around at my home, my sanctuary, the place Justin had tried to take from me. Every room held memories, some painful from recent months, but mostly good ones. This was where I'd raised my daughter, where my wife and I had built our life, where I'd retreated after decades of public service. And this was where I'd learned that justice wasn't about revenge or cruelty. It was about consequences. It was about truth presented clearly and without embellishment. It was about ensuring that predators couldn't continue hunting, that the vulnerable were protected, that the law applied equally regardless of expensive suits and social connections. Justin had gambled that I was too old, too weak, too confused to fight back. He'd underestimated the very thing he should have feared most, a man who'd spent his life studying the law, who understood evidence and procedure, who knew that patience and documentation could be more powerful than any physical weapon. The sun moved lower in the sky, painting everything golden. I picked up my coffee, cold now, but I didn't mind, and thought about the journey from that March dinner to this September afternoon. Justice wasn't revenge. Justice was each person getting exactly what they earned, no more, no less. Justin had earned a criminal record and a ruined reputation. Thomas and Patricia had earned their fall from social grace, and I had earned my peace, my home, and the slow rebuilding of my relationship with my daughter. As I sat there, watching the day fade into evening, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: contentment. The war was over, justice had been served, and I was home. I smiled, raised my mug in a silent toast to truth, and settled deeper into my chair to finish my reading before Danielle arrived. The house was quiet, the neighborhood was peaceful, and for the first time in a very long time, everything was exactly as it should be. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching,